So check this out, man. This is strange and it's cruel and unusual is how it's titled here. Cruel and unusual. An untreated broken arm in a Mississippi prison results in an amputation. That's bad. That is bad. Christopher Boose awoke to see a sign from the paraplegic unit at the hospital where he had arrived 5 hours earlier, shackled and drifting in and out of consciousness. Cut it off, he remembered the doctors shouting shortly after they had wheeled him into an operating room. Cut it off so we don't lose him. Then everything went dark. Then he came to, he tried to turn over, and my right arm wasn't there, he said. God, that is terrible. He started crying, and a nurse came over to reassure him he had died on the operating table before doctors revived him. He was lucky to be alive, but they had to amputate his arm to stop the spread of sepsis. The infection stemmed from a broken bone after Boose, then 38, fell off his bunk at the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility onto his arm, left untreated for a week. The sepsis spread. Now, that's the jail right here close to my house out here in Rankin County. Right over there off, I think it's technically in Pearl. Man, that is horrible. A broken arm leading to you having to get your damn arm cut off. But he almost died on the operating table. I mean, so pick your poison. Now, if I had to live without an arm, I could live without an arm. But I've always told, my parents, or if I was married at the time, my ex-wife, if I ever got into a situation where I was paralyzed, unplug it. Let me go. Starve me to death. Do something where you're not guilty of murder or aggravated assaulting me. But I don't want to live and be a burden on anybody if I'm ever paralyzed. I'm putting that out there for everybody to hear. So if I'm ever in that situation and somebody helps unalive me, that's okay. That's okay. That's what I wanted. It's what I wanted. Now I'm going to get these notifications from YouTube and Facebook because their AI is going to hear that. And they're going to be like, are you okay? Are you considering self-harm? No, I'm not. Anyhow, let's get to the rest of this story. So they had the infection had stemmed from a broken bone where he fell off his bunk and it left untreated for a week. A 1-year sentence for a drug court infraction became a lifetime sentence as an amputee. The Newton County man alleges in a lawsuit filed in federal court for the Southern District of Mississippi. The lawsuit targets Vital Core Health Strategies, a private company contracted to provide health care in Mississippi's prisons. Systemic neglect gave way to cruel and unusual punishment prohibited by the Constitution, the lawsuit contends. Vital Core did not respond to requests for comment about the lawsuit or the episode that led to Boose losing an arm. Boose, now 40, filed his lawsuit in June and reached out to Mississippi Today after it began publishing its Behind Bars Beyond Care series, documenting alleged denial of health care in Mississippi prisons. He and his attorneys say his story is a case study of how routine injuries in prison escalate into permanent harm. Additionally, his lawyers' arguments aim to test the constitutional boundary. At what point under the Eighth Amendment does the delay of medical care in prison amount to cruel and unusual punishment? He says they took off my arm. In February of 23, Boose, a Mississippi State University grad and former Wells Fargo employee, was arrested for violating the terms of a drug court program. He was sentenced to Newton County Circuit Court to complete alcohol and drug treatment in prison, a sentence designed to be a 1-year rehabilitative term, his attorney said. Look, and as far as all that goes, I'm not getting you any sympathy here. You effed around, you found out, and that's what jail is for. It is the textbook F around and find out location. But with that said, absolutely nobody except, pedos and rapists deserve to suffer like that. Nonviolent criminals, we'll say. No nonviolent criminal deserves to suffer like that. The guy falls off his bed, breaks his arm, whatever. Now, what I would like to know, and maybe it's in the rest of this story here, Did he ask for treatment? You know, a lot of times these guys don't want to be treated. They just want to play victim and scream and shout and stuff like that. So you just never know. So let's finish reading it here. So we have, I don't know, man, this is really long. We'll read a little bit more here. It says, so he entered the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility, a sprawling 171 acres in Rankin County. It sounds like a real estate guide, doesn't it? It's a sprawling 171 acres in the plush Rankin County in the Pearl School District. The prison has 18 housing units with a capacity of about 4,000. It holds the largest number of people at any state prison. Fun fact here, if that's what you want to call it. So whenever you look at the pedophile thing, like the red flag searcher to see where pedophiles live near you, it always shows Pearl and Rankin County having the highest amount. Well, there's a reason for that, because they count the bastards that are in jail serving time for sexual assault here at the Mississippi Correctional Facility as being residents of Rankin County. So it's a little disingenuous how they come up with that number. So it has everybody over in Jackson talking about, oh, look at all them pedophiles in Pearl. All the pedos live in Pearl. Well, because we're having to house them from everywhere else like Jackson. Just a fun fact there for you. A little information next time somebody from Jackson or Hinds County wants to crack a little joke about the pedophiles in Rankin County or sexual or rapist or whatever, you can say, well, it's because we're housing all your kinfolk from Jackson and everywhere else. So anyway, but when Boone arrived for his sentence, it took months before he received any of the drug treatment mandated by the judge, he said in an interview. Well, to that, I'll say this. He's getting drug intervention. It's called detox. He should be on a sobriety streak at this point. Because that's really all you got to have to get sober. Let's just be 100% honest here. You just got to get past that first week or so of detox. First, it's the physical detox, and then it's the mental detox, the learning you can actually not need drugs. So anyway, in a phone call from prison, Boose alerted his mother, Cynthia, to the delay. She called the prison and eventually discovered the Mississippi Department of Corrections was short on drug counselors, she said in an interview. Quote, I called and they said it was because of staffing. Cynthia said, okay, so my son is sitting there waiting for treatment or waiting for a class and y'all can't find nobody to do it? Staffing shortages have been a persistent problem for both MDOC and Vital Care Corps. In April, the department withheld $2 million in state money for Vital Corps for having inadequate staff, according to its contract, Mississippi Day reported. An MDOC spokesperson said the department would not comment on pending litigation and did not respond to a question about the agency's alleged shortage of drug counselors. After about 4.5 months, Boose said he began receiving drug counseling, but his treatment was interrupted by the episode that would irrevocably change his life. You know, words you don't use very often, like irrevocably. Kind of a tongue twister there. Irrevocably change his life. Kind of got a little Michael Jackson thing going on there. Hee. That's what, is that the first thing y'all see is hee. Christopher Boose lost his right arm to an infection after breaking it while incarcerated at the Mississippi. We gathered that. That's why we read this whole thing. On December 15th, 23, Boose took a hot shower and returned to his cot in Quick Bed, a unit where inmates sleep on bunk beds in dormitory-style housing. While climbing up to his bed, he slipped and fell onto the floor, his side bearing the brunt of the impact. The pain was immediate and radiated from his elbow to his collarbone. He asked the guard to escort him to the prison infirmary. The guard told him to go sit my ass back down, Boose said. Boose said he had no recourse. Now, I believe that. I really do. Based on some of the things I've heard out there, the way some of the guards treat folks. I say it all the time. Unless it's an actual death sentence, a prison sentence should not be a death sentence. And it seems like far too often it is. You know, guys getting raped by other guys with AIDS and just all kind of crazy things. I mean, like none of that shit should be happening. None of it. You should be able to go to prison, you know, for a year without coming out with a life sentence of some other sort or not coming out at all because of bullshit. Boose said he had no recourse. Quote, that's the problem. Born from absence of an organization process and requesting medical attention, said Rep. Becky Curry, the Republican chairwoman for the House of Corrections Committee. Curry has traveled to the prisons around the state and spoken with inmates about issues they face when trying to get medical care. She said inmates were often not provided any formal process for scheduling of medical appointments. Some prisons also don't provide access to medical professionals overnight. Look, man, they got a real problem in these prisons. I don't think that anybody's denying that. Well, Burl Cain, I'm sure, is denying it, but even the conservative politicians I know here in the state, and conservatives are tough on crime and all that stuff, understand that there's been a problem in the Mississippi Department of Corrections for a while, and we need to put more money into it. We also need to quit using prisons as a drug rehabilitation. And I know I talk a lot of shit, but I'm being serious. We need to invest into drug or mental rehabilitation facilities, crazy houses, insane asylums. We really need to invest into insane asylums in this country, in this state in particular. It would drastically improve the homelessness situation and a lot of other problems. Because I was married to somebody who had a family member. It's probably not fair to point out exactly who, but I was married to somebody who had a family member who had a really bad drug problem, and it was dealing with, watching them have to deal with that. And if you're married into that, you have to deal with it too by default. Watching them have to deal with that, where I realized just how ill prepared the state of Mississippi is for dealing with a drug addict. This family member I know got arrested out here in Rankin County, and she threw such a fit in jail that they were worried she was going to die, and they just let her ass out because they said, you know what, you're going to die. Just go die in the streets. Or maybe they dropped off at the emergency room and they said, you're good, you're done. We don't want you dying on our watch and us having to be sued for, to be responsible for you. But we really need to do something in this state, for drug addicts and insane people, because prison ain't it. And if we're just looking at a dollar and cents standpoint, it's not fair. That ain't what prisons are for. Prisons aren't for drug rehabilitation. Now, I know I just said that you in there and you detox, and that's true. You can, but that's not what they're for, and that's not what we should be using them for. We should have different programs in place for that. I think, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I am. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I seem to be wrong a lot. That's sarcasm, by the way. I'm never wrong. What I think is you get people into these detox facilities, these drug facilities, once they get over the physical side of it. And of course, you got to have armed guards and all that. I think these are the people you put in the work camps and you have on the side of the road cleaning and all of that stuff. I don't think that's the place for other kind of criminals. I'm not saying there's not a place for them doing work, but I think that drug rehab, drugs, minor stuff, that'd be a great place for them to burn their time, stay busy, because that's the best way to get over about anything. Andrew Gosser and myself were talking about this on the show this morning. I think, when you're going through mental health struggles, the best thing you can do is stay as busy as you possibly can, whether it's working out, reading, whatever. Keep your mind and body moving forward, staying busy. What they say, idle time is the devil's playground. So true in so many different ways.